Hi, this is George Popovic. In this video, I want to talk about a variant of the builder pattern that was recently invented by an Italian software engineer called Marco Castigliego. Marco was working on a task where the maximum control over the process of creation of an object was needed. So he noticed that by using the common approach that the builder pattern suggests was not safe enough, because the client of the builder could leave the object in an inconsistent state if not used it correctly. So what he did was to create a strict implementation to guide, or let's say instruct, the client how to use the builder. After the completion of the task, he realized that the same approach could be used in many other scenarios. So he created a pattern and named it the step builder. In this presentation, I want to talk about the step builder pattern, but before doing so, I think it would be appropriate to briefly say a few words about the builder pattern itself, and then I will move on to explain the step builder. So the explanation of the builder pattern. The builder pattern is a creational pattern. We know that those are the patterns that are concerned about the way the objects are instantiated. By studying creational patterns, we can gain control over our software. In other words, we will be able to influence some variables such as the security, performance, and accessibility. Some examples of creational patterns are the factory pattern, builder, singleton, prototype, and also the inversion of control pattern. So the problem that is presented is that in occasions a complex object is not easy to manage from the client point of view. Also, the parts that form the complex object are not independent, and the way the complex object is created is not hidden from the client. So what the builder pattern intends to do is define some interface that contains the methods that are needed for building this complex object. This interface will be implemented by a builder which will build the object for the client. So the client will safely interact with the builder and not with the complex object itself. It is also important to mention that the use of builders is common when the objects are really big and really complex. Some might even say that when there is a complex object which is not too complex, maybe there is not even need to use a builder. But I'm going to show simple example, which for this example I'm not going to use a very complex object, but I think it's going to be enough to have an idea of what the builder pattern does. Here we can see a very simple object called product. This will be our complex object, and in order to create this object, we will have a builder. So this builder, this is a common implementation of a builder. Some people might prefer to use an static inner class in the object itself. This is also another way of doing it. So there are many flavors of how that we can choose to make our builders, but this is just one of the most common ones. So as you see here, we have a duplication of the components that form this this object, and we create some kind of setter methods that have the interface as a return type, and what we achieve by doing this is step by step creating an object. At the end we will have a method called build, which will pack all the values we gather into the actual object itself and return it to the caller. So here in the interface we will see those methods exposed, and the client will use the interface to access the functionality of the builder and create the product and customize it as desired. The disadvantage that Marco noticed in this approach is that it's not strict enough, and some of the steps are not mandatory, and this, if is not used correctly, can leave this object in an inconsistent state. So that is the motivation behind the step builder, to fix this issue. Now I'm going to talk about the step builder. So the advantages that we already mentioned are that the user is guided in the creation of the object, so it will be intuitive if we are using a modern IDE to see how this builder will show us which is the next step that is needed. Also, it will be restrictive, so we will have mandatory steps, and this will make us be confident that that the object will never be left in a consistent state, and also those steps will be flexible, and we will see this very soon. To demonstrate the step builder, I will use an example called the cup of tea example. In his blog, Marco used a pizza, sorry, a panino, which is an Italian dish, but with more or less the same goal behind this explanation. I will use the cup of tea, which I think that is simple enough to understand this pattern. So as we see, to make a cup of tea, we have mandatory steps, which are step 1 and step 2 and step 4. So in the first step we will boil the water. In the second step we will put a tea bag, and in the third step we will include some add-ons. So depends in our taste, we might add lemon, honey, milk. An Indian person might add cardamom to his tea, sugar maybe, and some people might add brown sauce, or maybe some people might not add anything of this and directly drink the tea with the water. Why not? So let's go to our IDE and perform this example. Here I am. So I'm going to start with this example. I'm going to call this project, let's say, a cup of tea, step by step. So, following the principle, always keep it simple and stupid. This is the best programming principle ever. Let's create our cup of tea. And our cup of tea will have tea, of course. Also, I am sorry, private. Boiling water type boolean, and some add-ons, as we said before. Let's create this, let's say, as an enum, and let's give some tea brand names. For example, Barry's, Bewley, Lipton, or the Indian famous one, Tata. Let's create our add-ons. So some of our add-ons are milk, lemon, cardamom, sugar, brown sauce, honey. So go back to our cup of tea, import this list, add the getters and the setters, and let's add also a toString method. We are going to override toString, sorry, so we can later prove in the console the values. Let's say cup of tea with or maybe, let's say, maybe better something like this. Output something like this. We are interested mainly in the add-ons, but we can also include the T brand. Let's say, oops, T, and return output. I am going to add just a new line in each of these, so it will be presented better. So I think this is enough. We could include the boiling water and the condition, like if the water is warm, is true, let's return a message, otherwise return other. So yeah, let's adjust one more method so we use all the variables. Private is the T warm. So let's say it returns on a string if is, oops, I am sorry, if is boiling water, the T is warm, T is hot, otherwise the T is cold. Return. And I'm going to just call this thing here. Okay, so we have all the variables used. So this is the object, the complex object we want to build. Now we are going to create the builder, actually the step builder. So let's create a class and call it T step builder. So as Marco explained in his blog, the first thing we want to do is create the interfaces that will define each of the steps and then implement those steps inside an inner class. But before implementing the interfaces, we need to create something, some method that will be the entry point into the builder. So we are going to create a method which we are going to call new step builder. So it will be a public static, I'm going to call it kettle, because the kettle is the first thing we will need. New step builder. And return new steps. So the steps will be the inner class that will implement each of the interfaces, but we will do it step by step. It will make sense very soon. So creating the first interface. The kettle will boil the water, boil water, and the return type will be the next step, so the T selector. So we will choose the brand of tea we want. So moving to the next step, by default the interfaces are static if they are inside the class as inner interfaces, so there's no need to mark them as static. So public interface T selector, the method in it will be return an add-on selector. Select T and T, let's say T brand. Okay. I am sorry, I made a mistake here. Yeah, this is not a method. Yeah, these are interface, not methods. So moving to the next interface. Add-on selector. There's a typo here. Add-on selector. Add-on selector. So since we said that we might have different add-ons, one of the methods is going to return something that implements this interface again. This will allow us to add as many as we want. So here we see the flexibility. So let's say add-on. Why not call it add-on? And the add-on, I'm sorry, the add-on, another typo, sorry about this. And the other method that will be defined in this interface will be the one that will bring us to the last step, to the one for serving the tea. I'm going to call it no, I can call it no add-ons. So no more add-ons wanted, and it will return the last step, which we are going to call a ready step. And finally, we are going to implement the last of the steps. Ready step, which will return cup of tea, in a method called tea is ready. So far we see how we are restricting the steps and making them mandatory or optional in the case of the add-on selector step. Now we will create an inner class to implement these interfaces, all these interfaces, and this way we will complete our step builder. So let's create private static class steps that implements each of these: kettle, T selector, add-on selector, and ready step. I could click here and select the add unimplemented methods, but probably Eclipse will not order them as we want to order them, so I'm going to manually write each of those methods again, so to be more easier to understand. But before we also implement the methods, we will need the duplication of the variables that the cup of tea itself has. So I'm going to create them first. So tea, boiling water, and the list, we can make it final. List of tea add-ons, let's call them tea add-ons, equals new array list. So we have each of the elements that are needed to make the tea in the builder. So let's go step by step, implement each of the steps. We say that the first one is to boil the water. So public tea selector, boil water, and we are making it very simple. So boil water equal true, and return this. So this will be the implementation of the next step. Add-on selector, select tea. I think we called it select tea. Yes, we call it select tea, and the parameter was tea brand. So this tea will be equal to tea brand. And again, return this. The next implementation, the add-on selector, add-on tea add-on. So remember that the add-on selector interface had two methods, so this is why we are using it in here. Did I call this method add-on? Yes, add-on. So because it has two methods, so I will return it again in here. This way I will be able to include more add-ons. Actually, I need to do this tea add-ons dot add tea add-on and return this. The other implementation of the add-on interface was different. It was the one that said we had enough, we don't want any more add-on, we are going to return the ready step, and we call it no add-ons. Let me refresh my mind. No add-ons. Yes, here it is. here we are going to just return this. And finally, one more method to implement. Cup of tea. Tea is ready. And here, such as if we were using a normal builder, we are going to create a cup of tea. And we are going to set the values. Set boiling water, cup of tea, set tea, and cup of tea, set add-ons, return the cup of tea. Why it doesn't take this one? Sorry, we call it tea add-ons. See how the user experience is enhanced, as Marco says. New step builder dot. The only thing we can do at this moment is boil the water, is the first step. Then the next step, we can select the tea, and let's pick a tea brand. Let's make Indian tea, is good. Tea. Tata. And let's go to a new line. See now, we can select the add-on, so it's the next step. See how it guides us through the steps. The add-on, we are going to need a drop of milk. I'm sorry. Actually, 2 drops of milk. And a little bit of cardamom. Cardamom, two cardamoms to make. No, it's too strong with 2 cardamoms. Yeah, okay, let's make 2 cardamoms. Two cardamoms and sugar. So this is how you make Indian tea. If I'm going to put 2 sugar. 3. It's a bit too sweet, but it's good. And finally, we are going to say we don't want more add-ons, and we are going to say the tea is ready. So here is our Indian tea ready. Let's don't spill it. Let's put it in some object. Cup of tea. What about this? And SOP. Cup of tea. So here is our Indian tea. I just pressed the compile button, and here we have a cup of tea used the step builder pattern. Maybe this example was very simple, but I think it was good to explain the main ideas behind this pattern. And as you see, you can use this approach in any scenario where you need mandatory steps, where also you need the mandatory steps but flexibility in occasions, and of course the main functionality of the builder, that is hide from the client how the object is created. So it will guarantee that we will never have an inconsistent state for our objects. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation. More information about the step builder pattern you can find in Marco's blog, which is called Remove Duplication and Fix Bad Names. And that's all.